And we're off. This is the SE KOS-MOS 2023 finals, the first one of these tournaments ever. The top two seeds in the bracket have made it all the way to the finals. They did have first round buys, but there's a reason they were our top two seeds. And yeah, let's get going. What's the rule set? Same plus wall random combo. Removing plus. I have no idea if that helps first turn or second turn here. Same plus combo in general does some to mitigate first turn's advantage. That tends to play quite well for second turn. My guess is first turn's still somewhat favored, but I can't claim to have knowledge here. And yeah, so they're going to be playing this rule set 3 times. I think in general we should assume a lot more likelihood of plus wall than same, right? There will be same setups, but if someone goes in 5 and the other person goes in 1, they probably have a same in 1 or 2 of 4, but not both, right? They're not having the combo in both squares. They might have some plus walls. So my point, I guess, is we should be expecting people to have more single captures than kind of multi-captures through rules. No idea what kind of starter that should lead us to either. I think both of these players are fundamentally, partially, the reason they're the top two seeds is they were clearly the top two performers in GBs throughout the year. Turdz played slightly more, Delial performed slightly better. That got Turdz the 1 seed, but, they both performed great. Sorry, checking messages. But I think they're players who have more awareness of how they might want to adapt to these rule sets or more experience adapting to them as well than I do. And so I'm curious to see how it's handled. My first instinct is to play a weak corner. Direct the game somewhere I'm happy with. What level is it? It is level 6. Level 6 is an annoying level to have sweepers. You can get like 8/6/6s, but those aren't that consistent. So we not only have this kind of clunky, difficult rule set to think about, conceptualize, but we also have one of the levels that is the least clean, right? Level 5 is a very clean level. A lot of cards are very powerful. Level 7 is a very clean level. Level 10 is quite a clean level. Level 9 is like an unclean level 10. If you like messier games than level 10 offers, level 9 is a good choice. Level 8 is its whole thing. Level 4 is is clearly messier than level 5, though generally on the unmessy side, while level 3 gets a bunch messier, right? There's kind of level 3 through 5 are from most messy to least messy. Level 9 and 10, similar. Not sure on level 1 and 2. Level 8's its own thing. And level 6 and 7 have that effect, but it has kind of the biggest split of any, where level 6 is one of, if not the messiest levels, the least clean stuff happening. And level 7 is maybe not the cleanest level. I'd probably go with level 5 for that. Just kind of the most power cards that lock things in really smoothly. We see a center starter. So this is probably a fairly easily recaptured card, right? You can imagine kind of like a, I don't know, 4-2-6-8 that has basically every side of this. That doesn't mean that's the card that's in his hand, but a 3-7-5-8 is every side of this. That's a real card. I'm not saying he has a card that is every side of this, but it's a fairly easy card to take multiple ways with the same thing because the double twos. My instinct would have probably been chuck this card in 3 if I saw it in my hand and just make sure I have stuff that's really easy to recapture, but I don't know if that's right. And we don't know what direction he faces. Something I was talking about in the previous round of KOS-MOS when I watched what did I watch? Delial versus Yevon, was we should have a range in each position, right? We're going to vary depending on the cards we receive. If someone, for instance, always, and maybe starters, you want to be, there's reasons to be consistent. But, if you always meet a corner like this with, say, the strongest corner you have that sets up combo potential, Well, on this rule set, there might be just nothing that sets up combo potential because you just don't have sames, right? Twos are hard to play off. You happen to not be able to play off the eight or seven. You don't have sames. Suddenly, that kind of thing is out of the window. And what do you do in the absence of that, right? We should all have this range of types of moves we play. Some of that is it's good to not be entirely predictable. I think most players don't either take notes or have strong memories of specific opponent styles, but I think enough do, and especially enough do at the top level of closed, that you want it to not be obvious where you intend to go in every structure or setup. But a second thing is, if you're adapting to rules and hands properly, like you're not always going to play the same type of move, and having comfort with multiple moves is useful. That said, my instinct on this set is weak corner. I think one of the reasons for that is a potential downside of a weak corner is you cannot take back that solidly, right? If you have twos facing out, you're going to have to take those by overpowering, and you're going to have to be susceptible to combos. But in a world where the only combos are from sames and plus walls, I think you can do a lot to mitigate the actual chance of being comboed and make the odds pretty low. So my thought was maybe with plus missing, something that sets up combo chains that might normally be difficult to handle might be easier to handle. The argument against is you shouldn't be worried about that stuff anyway. You're on first turn. You're the one who's much likelier to get combos. Playing a weak corner, the whole point is to set up this big combo chain, and you just want to have the maximal chance to take advantage of it. Therefore, the more rules are in play, the stronger weak corners are. Yeah, I can see an argument both ways, and we should be skeptical of things that are plausible but we don't have data on, right? What we should do when we have these kind of this sounds plausible and this sounds plausible is we should try to figure out a way to test it and learn from having tested it. We shouldn't go, this is plausible, it must be true, right? That's an easy way to start believing a lot of false things. The person who trusts their common sense too much is not to be trusted about very much. All right, Delhi also goes a weak outfacing thing. And in general, weak numbers outfacing are good for first turn. And specifically here, it's even on level 6. Even on level 6, which is one of the clunkiest levels for having general power, I think Turdz is clear favorite to have a card that has all needed captures in both 4 and 8. But what I think this tells us about Delhi's hand is without plus on, he didn't really have setups, right? Like, he could have set up an 8 facing left as kind of a challenging thing for Turdz to take, but he couldn't retake it, so he didn't trust it, right? There are things he could have done, clearly, I mean, just from the card we see, that create more challenge for Turdz to take, and we just have to assume Delhi did not have the captures there, right? They didn't work with Delhi's hand. So if you're Turdz, you now know that 8s to the left are really hard for Delhi to take. I might be wrong there, but I think that's a reasonable conclusion. I'm not sure you can take advantage of that. It just seems like something that there's pretty good evidence that's the case, unless Delhi is a player who really likes to play weak corners in closed. I would have no idea. Turdz would know better than me. So Turdz should be drawing smarter conclusions here than I am. But if this is not a usual move for Delhi, then it gives information about what the rest of his hand can do. Is it that useful to know he can't take 8 facing left? Probably not. And are we 100% certain of that? Probably not. But it does seem like the information we have, and this is closed, so I can't talk about anything else, so I'm going to draw a lot of kind of silly conclusions, and I'm going to bet we do not see a card from Delhi that can take an 8 facing left. Official prediction. That said, the natural square for Turdz to go is 3, and 3 can be difficult unless he has a big setup there. And it's hard to set up on the 8 and 7 because you need like exactly sames to have the multiple captures, which means I think Turdz is more likely to play in 2 or 6. Also, if I was gonna bet on where Delhi set up a same, if he did set up a same, I think I'd bet on 4 over 8. I'm not super sure on that, but I think Actually, no, 2884 exists and is, yeah, there's stuff like that. But there's like 7258. I was trying to think which types of cards are there more of? Two to the right, five down, or two up, four left? I don't know. Probably about even. There's a good chance he is one of them, right? Or it was just a move of I can't find anything comfortable. I think Turdz will play 2 or 6. He recently, in a closed game against me, played in the equivalent of 1 or 9, and he beat me. And I think he probably had a good chance to beat me anyway, but I totally misbrained and accidentally comboed something I didn't mean to. So let's pretend that game never happened. But this is to say, Turdz will also look to 1 and 9. I think that's very unlikely here because if you play 1 or 9, his point was there were a lot of high numbers facing towards the kind of safe square. Like if you play 1, 4 is pretty safe. Here, yeah, 4 is very safe, right? In that one, there were a lot of high numbers facing towards 4, and I had to reckon with various combos. And when my brain didn't work, I set off far too many and was immediately in trouble. So, my point is, I don't think 1 or 9 are very likely. I think 4 and 8 don't make sense. Turdz is very likely to have very good play in those squares. You don't want to remove them from the game. So, I think, yeah, 2 or 6 were my prediction. Now, we have no idea if Delial can take 8s to the right. Turdz is putting out a lot of high numbers facing right, which makes me think either his hand was just really overbalanced that way and he's getting rid of them, or his remaining stuff is pretty decent power to the left. Because at this point, Turdz doesn't need high right power. The only things facing right are a 1 and a 2. What he needs is high left facing power. Note that there's now basically no combo potential. If Delial has the same in 4, it's never flipping anything extra unless something weird is played in 6. Similar if 8 happens. So maybe you play 3, trying to induce something difficult in 6 if you have 8. But I do just wonder how many stuff can be taken. Like, so the main moves here are 1, 3, and 8. 4 is sometimes played if you can combo back an 8, but that's pretty unlikely, right? It's really hard to be weak to the 2 facing left from 5, so your combo is unlikely. Also, if it is weak to that, maybe you get comboed back at some point. It's better to combo the card in 4 through 7. So I think 4 is out, and you're left with 1, 3, and 8 as the main moves. And I think of 3 as the Q square, because that allows a Q. I think of 8 as the T square, because that allows a T. Very subtle at naming. And I think of 1 as the MC square, because it's a move MC plays a lot. And 1 is kind of saying, I just don't think you can take this, and if you can't take it, I'm way ahead. The nice thing about 1 is if you also have 3, if you play 1, even if they can take you from 4, if they can't take you from 4 and they give you 4, you're happy to play 4. But if they can take you and you can play in 3 with a decent number facing out, if they can't take that, you might still be in pretty good shape. You haven't necessarily lost, even if they can take you. Sometimes you can also go an 8. You're behind, but you're not necessarily lost. And if they cannot take you, you're often ahead. This is a rule set where taking is harder, right? There's no plus. Sames off of 2 and 5 are fairly unlikely. There's definitely cards like 8, 6, 5, 3 that have the capture due to the 5, but it's going to be pretty rare. I'm not sure there are cards that use the 2. There's definitely plus wall potential, but this is the kind of rule set where I would start thinking about saying, I don't think you can take this, or you have to prove it. And I think that's a decent way of playing these positions, especially if you think you're behind. If you really like your position because you happen to have really good cards or whatever reason, then maybe you don't do that. But I think, for instance, bluffing 1 is, or like playing 1 hoping they can't take it, has more upside than playing 8 and hoping they can't take it. Seto loves to play the T-square in these structures. I'm not sure he would here, though. There's such weak numbers facing it, you don't have any combo potential. So I think the kind of default move is 3. I think 3 is the move that on average good players would play with an unknown hand. I think 6 is fairly nonsensical. 9, you just don't have the combo play facing towards the free square, and 8, 4, you don't have the combo play. So it really is 1, 3, and 8. And which you play of those is somewhat a matter of taste. But yeah, I think 3 is the most logical iteration of those moves. I think I probably would have tried 1. I don't know the hand. Or I think I'm more likely to play 1 than a lot of players, right? Like, I think if you kind of put a bunch of people in this spot and give them a bunch of kind of somewhat randomized hands. Also, note Deli could in fact take an 8 to the left. I lose my bet. My reads are not good. Now, given that Deli could take an 8 to the left and he chose not to put that out there, that suggests to me there is a really good chance he does have a same in 4 or 8. Right? I've made one wrong read, but it was wrong. But that doesn't mean I should no longer trust any kind of deductive logic. We can, it's not deductive, but we can make some assumptions here. We saw something that seemed like it was indicating one thing to me. It may have indicated another thing to you. But given it wasn't indicating that thing, we can narrow what it possibly could indicate. And so now I think there's a very good chance Deli has the same in at least one of 4 or 8. Um, Also possible he played it just thinking, this I can take easily with fairly high numbers facing out. Also possible. But I would guess he has the same in one of those squares. Now, if you're Turdz, the main squares are 6 and 8. So I was going to say, on 1, 3, and 8, let's pretend no one ever plays any other squares. I think there was something like, you give good players this position, something like 50% they go 3, 40% they go, maybe 60% they go 3, 30% they go 8, 10% they go 1, something like that. And for me, it would be more like still top odds for 3, but like not that far behind for 1 and way behind for 8. And I think it's worth thinking when you see this kind of position, what's your move rate and what are the move rates of people who are better than you at closed? Because no one's playing the same spot every time. But if, the player you think is the best closed player is like, say you think it's Seto, and you just see they're going an 8 there 60% plus of the time, maybe you need to look to 8 more. And this is true of me as well. Very much. I think I have a somewhat weird play pattern there. And it might be that I have an edge against the field, that I'm ahead, but it also could very easily be that I'm just playing the wrong ratios. So if your Turd's main moves are 6, if you have the capture. Now, if we think Deli has the same in 4 or 8, Turd's almost certainly does not have sames in those squares, right? Deli's the one who set that up. Then there is some danger to capturing 3 by overpowering. You can also think about 1. What I was going to say here was I also, much like for Deli, I play in 1 a lot more than most people play in that spot. I also play in 1 here as first turn a lot more than most people play it. Though I think here specifically with such weak numbers facing towards 4, and with no way to capture that guarantees you won't be comboed, though again, combos are less likely without plus on, I would be scared of playing 1. I would probably play 6 or 8. Turdz goes 9. Now, generally speaking, when you go 9, which is very possible here, I'm not ruling this out. I didn't talk about it, but it's clearly the 4th most common move, and for reason. It's often saying you have a card for 6 and 8 and a card for 1 and 4. And if you think you have a really amazing sweeper, then sometimes playing in 9 can force the right squares to be filled in a way that other moves don't quite. Like, let's say you have something like 6-6-8-1, and you really want that to land in 1 and 4. So you don't want 1 and 4 to get occupied. And you specifically want it to be a good chance you're going to land in 1 rather than 4. Though you're happy to land in 4 as well. Something you could think there is, I go 9, I really force them to go 6. I go 8, and I'm just confident I'm going to land my 6-6-8-1. And my 6-6-8-1 cannot lose there, right? So it's a way of kind of guaranteeing you get a tie plus, and I think that can be pretty valuable. There are a bunch of spots where there's a kind of somewhat offbeat move, and I think when weaker players play it, it's usually not good. But when strong players play it, they're basically forcing a specific endgame, and I suspect that's what's happening here. Um, like Turdz's point here is not that he has just set up massive combo potential in 6 or 8. I'm certain of this. It is that he is a sweeper for 1 and 4, right? It is that he thinks he can force a particular endgame that he is happy to play. And I think when weaker players make this kind of move, they're doing it to specifically set something up now, and stronger players are more long sighted with this move type. Or at least I'd like to think that's what I'm doing when I play it, but that's my understanding of this move type. Now, you might think that means Deli really needs to block 1, but it is pretty scary to leave 6 open. Maybe he can block 1, but if he's comboed in 1, he's in a lot of trouble. So the standard thing to do is block 6. But there is a case for 1, and Deli does consider everything, right? Deli is not a player who spends all his time looking at the obvious thing just to do the obvious thing. He's going to look at a variety of things and then sometimes do the obvious thing. I think 6 and 1 are the squares you look at, though. I think there's very little chance to play in the other squares. One reason Deli might not want to play in 6 is if he does have 2-8-8-4 and he was trying to land that in 8, going in 6 just gives up on that dream forever. And sometimes it's hard to let go of stuff like that. On the other hand, if his play was in, so he does go 6, this makes sense. If his play is in 4 rather than 8, he's relatively happy to see this. Note he goes in 6 with a card that isn't weak to 5, right? Because Turdz is going to go in 8. Deli didn't even care about capturing 9. Turdz will recapture that easily. And then Turdz has a sweeper for 1 and 4. And if that card does combo Deli's card in 4, he needs that combo not to extend any further. Though it probably doesn't make a difference. There's some chance Turdz goes 1 here, but yeah, very unlikely. And I think Turdz left himself with a good sweeper. Now note he did set up a same in 6, right? He gave 5, 8, 2, 7, 6, and 8. But I don't think that was the point. Note that card in 6 did not take 3, right? He did not actually set up a threat against 3, and I suspect he didn't have one. I think Deli's move in 3, Turdz could not take. And I'm predicting something like 6681, 5683. That would suck for Deli because that is the plus wall. Yeah, Turdz has said, oops, sorry. 7385. Sure, something that was going to be a sweeper on the left, or had a good chance to sweep. So we can look back at Turdz's position. He did not have the capture in 6. The obvious square to play was 8, but anything you put in 8 is maybe combo susceptible. You really have to get new out of your hand. It's doing almost nothing. And it doesn't land in 6. It doesn't land too well in 1. Maybe you can play 1, but and maybe you can play 8. Maybe new in 8 isn't so bad, but 5827 is a really bad sweeper at the end. So he played 9, saying 5827 has 6 and 8, and 7385 has the left side. And I think the critical point was having the left side. And first turn gets the win with a, lucky last turn combo, but we can see how he set up this endgame to, try to minimize danger to himself. On the other hand, from Deli's perspective, I'm always skeptical of these weak corners against a 5-starter. I think it leaves you open to combos, but again, there are less combos, right? Plus is off. And I think it also gives them kind of easy captures at the end, and second turn should be creating challenges. But Deli on his second turn did create a challenge, and Turdz couldn't take it. Deli on his third move took the free square, which I think was correct. And on his fourth move, he played the stuff that put him up 7-3 with a difficult number facing out. and it just happened. One higher, he wins. One lower, he ties. Um, so Deli did have an 8 up as well and chose the 7. And I think that's the right choice. I was putting Turdz on something with a 6 and an 8, right? I was putting Turdz on something that he would have a consistent sweeper here. So I think I agree with Deli's decision. I think it's a little easier to combo an 8 than a 7 on level 6. I could be wrong there. Yeah. So I think both played pretty well here. Like, I don't have problems with how this game was played. Just, stuff happens. And they're going to stop for today, so we will stop as well.